if the any lawyers here in the room can tell us what is the quickest way we can cut off or we can lower these elected officials' salaries. Do we need a referendum, or is this something that they need to um, agree themselves to do?
Okay, so basically the process of reducing their salaries, eh?
Yes, 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 that's my concern.
Aya, sawa sawa. I think if there is no any other person wa kuuliza swali, kuna watu kidogo tu wamecomplain kwa DM yangu, si accept hizo mics zao. It is not that ninakataa guys, ni vile sometimes siwaoni, unless maybe nikutumie mic ndio unaweza kuingia direct, so please follow me, follow pia KOT ndio aweze kukuona pia. Yeye aoni watu wengi, ananiambia anaona like 6 people, na kuna pia watu wana complain sana sana, so thank you. Professor, I think mic ni yako sasa, because hatuna mtu mwingine. So Eric Dhauri, karibu kwa space. Yeah, karibu.
Raymond, I think also tunaweza shuka to allow other people to come in. Naona speakers imejaa. That's why.
Yeah, actually kama umeuliza tu swali unaweza kushuka chini, and then kuna watu wengine pia wanataka kupanda hapo hivyo, wengi sana, but kama unataka kukaa hapo juu unaweza kukaa. Patiane comments zako. Karibu Professor.
Sorry. Can we stay so that if there's any clarity that's needed from our questions, we are able to directly ask? Is that okay?
Yeah, that is okay.
Thank you very much for those questions, and I'm happy Eric is also around, and some of the legal questions he will be able to assist us. The reduction of salaries, public salaries are supposed to be the purview of dealing with those ones, setting them up and all that is the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And although sometimes even Parliament, refuses, and sometimes they say that their salaries are supposed to be determined by the Public Service Commission, but according to the Constitution, it is that body. And if that body was minded during the reviews of salaries, because they do that, and there's been a lot of talk about the wage bill management, then they can be able to say that this is the new direction, and also with policy from the government, because this has been one of the demands, that if, for example, it's a member of parliament and you earn 1 million shillings, and you have the mortgage, the health, the car, we have all those things. That is, and we are one of the countries where political leaders are paid the most in the world. So that is really an issue that we need to revisit. And when we talk about even paying public debt and managing the budget, those are areas. And this benchmarking, when people go abroad and they have to pay, they are paid per diems every day of a lot of money. Actually, the salary and also sitting allowances, like you are supposed to to represent people, to legislate, to oversight. And when you sit in parliament, you're also given an allowance. If you sit in committees, you are given an allowance. If you go out, instead of whatever hotel you are in being paid and for your food and all that, there are those astronomical allowances. So with policy and with the government now doing what it has promised to do in terms of reducing those salaries, it is something that SRC can do. What is the quickest way of getting elected officials out? The recall law for MPs is now mature in terms of, although there's provision in the Constitution, and I remember in the other discussion with Omtata, was arguing that what is in the ordinary, what was in the ordinary law contradicts the Constitution in terms of recall. But I also argued that since it's 2 months, 2 years, and the 2 years are ending in 2 years are ending in August, that's next month. Those who feel that they need to recall their MPs and their MCAs can exactly do that, of course, following the Constitution. And it will be another matter to deal with the law which Omtata argued is unconstitutional for later. But for now, actually, the time is right. And that's why I think there are some constituencies which are already planning to do exactly that. And of course, there is a contradiction because the opposition, like ODM said that they were going to recall 6 of the MPs who voted yes. But if ODM was to go into a coalition again with the government, so one has also to look at such issues so that one is kind of consistent. Now, when it comes to how constitutionally the president can resign, the president can be impeached, of course, following the Constitution. And if is absent for whatever reason, then the deputy president first becomes the acting for 60 days so that there's an election. And of course, when there was no IBC, and there's not going to be an IBC for a while, because the panel is given 90 days, I believe, to finalize the selection. I think 90 days. And indeed, yes, 90 days. And indeed, Parliament can even extend the 90 days of the panel constituting the commission. So even another early election would be problematic in the absence of the IBC. I think it is Muguna who has argued that acting on Article 1, if citizens were able to push the government out, then there would be a transitional authority. But again, I don't think that the details have been farmed out constitutionally how that would be created, so that, all over the place, this person is not saying I want to be the transition authority, another one saying I want to be in the transition authority. So that requires, more thought. And indeed, also the argument was it is that one that transition authority which can decide on which is a proper IBC, which will be truly independent. But I think, although there is invocation of Article 1, and Eric might also speak on this, there is invocation of Article 1, but the mechanism of establishing a transition authority, the mechanism of how you appoint people to it, and to be sure that you don't excite the military and all that kind of stuff, those are issues to further discuss and build more consensus. But I feel those who are focusing on 2027 and those who are focusing on Ruto must go now. I think in terms of the conflict of interest, I think basically even some of the politicians that usually are more trusted are going back towards saying that even when you are in government, including your relatives and all that, you can trade with government. And the argument is that government gives most work. And therefore, that is why there should be leeway for people to, to do so and to declare and all that kind of stuff. But that actually destroys the conflict of interest law. As ESCC argued, it is better that it's not even passed in that form, because it is militating against what was supposed to be cured. And you see, the more we emphasize that most business must be done with government, the more we don't expand the private sector. Because there's still this continued focus, particularly by our policymakers, that most business must be done with the government, most, tendering and all that kind of stuff. And even focusing on, like, among the young people, focusing on the question of social entrepreneurship, because all these problems that we have, it is possible to solve a lot of them by creatively having social enterprises which are run by young people and by other people. So I think the conflict of interest law must be called out, and the National Assembly must be told that that's a no-go area. Because if one of the issues that actually keeps on recurring in terms of what agencies are fighting for is to demise corruption, then it can't be proper that that law is vandalized, so to speak. Is vandalized, and it's very, very unfortunate that has happened. And every time there's been this push for, I talked about open contracting, but there's been this push of every company must really explain who is behind it, the beneficial interest. And I think that is one. There was also that question of where, an MCA or, people using proxies and so on. The law to show that who is behind every company. Again, that is a very, very critical thing for us to accept. That also must be agreed on. The asset recovery and that noble idea of having an independent jury of citizens to shadow the asset recovery unit, because the asset recovery under the economic the Crimes Act, it actually recovers, but it has to go to court, and then the court has to accept that any property you have has been purchased through proceeds of corruption and all that. So I think that's an important, that would be an important thing, because the X spaces can begin to have, if it is something about asset recovery, so that there is that conversation there, and to also target the asset recovery, and then say we have gathered information that so and so, this is money that they didn't have. Even when, for example, now we say wealth declarations, because every 2 years, I think, public servants must declare what wealth they have. Like when you get into the position, 2 years later, it should even be 1 year. And then if you find that somebody has got unexplained wealth, then the asset recovery institution is told to look at you, and also this independent jury that was suggested. I think that's a good citizen innovation, because under Article 1, people are beginning to create a people's government, which is going to also shadow all government entities for public accountability. So I accept that. And actually, those who are abroad, you can follow in the countries, like if it's a country which we have done a contract with, their laws are better in terms of availing information. So you can tell them that we want this information, and even use their court processes, their institutions, to get that kind of information and bring it back home. But this issue of where one has got wealth from, it is an issue that requires to be followed, because people must get to a position where they understand that you can't profit from the government if you're working with it, accept that you're coming here to get a salary and that's it. You know, it was the Ndegwa report just after independence, which said that civil servants could do business because the constitution was clear. When you have this job, you are not allowed to do, you know, any other, you are not supposed to get into the private sector. And there are some companies, there are some countries, especially in the Arab world, where when you get into government, whatever businesses you were doing are now run by an entity of government, so that you don't do, you know, you are not supposed to do business whatsoever until your tour of duty is completed, so that there isn't this conflict. Of interest. How can we implement the constitution in its totality? There this civil society, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, the Katiba Institute, and the many who have really done us proud in terms of all the time litigating when the constitution is infringed. And I think that is an important thing to do. And these X spaces require to connect with them so that they can give them a push in terms of things that they take to court. But on the whole, one of the principal reason for government is to follow the constitution. So in actual fact, we shouldn't even have a situation where a government is being forced to follow the constitution. If there are lapses, they should be minor. And then when the government is told that you have done wrong here, it quickly corrects. And if people have to be taken to court or whatever, that happens. But I think for me, this Gen Z movement, its major focus and thrust, therefore, is to ensure that Kenya becomes a country where the constitution is implemented to the letter. And when we get to a situation of changing it, again, there is real consensus. We don't have changes just because people feel they need changes that will help them. The judiciary, actually, particularly when I worked at the counties, was very helpful in terms of protecting devolution, because national government did many things wanting to undermine devolution that has happened from 1963, when the first edition of devolution was cancelled. So yes, there is also, like everywhere else in the public sector, some corruption, but that's one arm that requires more engagement. So that when there are bad things they are doing, they are told, and also they are supported when there is the onslaught of the executive. But many constitutional things, like BBI was stopped by the judiciary, things that are not legal, the judiciary takes, and it has prevented constitutional changes. But again, whether it is the executive, it is the legislature, it's the judiciary, it's the independent commissions and offices, when they do wrong things, they must be called. They must be called out. I think one thing about Raila, I think one has to acknowledge, and this was said, that historically, he has been quite helpful in this country, and even suffered detention, I think, for 8-9 years and all that kind of stuff. He almost got, in 82, he almost got executed because of being associated with the coup. But again, given where we are, one has to be extremely sensitive to the demands of Gen Zs. Because, in today's meeting at KCC, when one sees ODM, one sees, all those parties there, it's like they are begging for inclusion in a coalition government, in a government of national unity. And if that happens, without the Gen Z saying that this is what they want, and I'm not sure that's what they want, then that would not be a good thing. But where he has also helped this country from, that can't be denied him. His father, Jaramogi, was even really a major actor in our structure, in our constitutional political structure, alongside Pio Kagia and all those all those others. Now the judiciary, you know, when they were attacked, and I think the Chief Justice's office was attacked. There's usually a judiciary protection unit of police, but somehow they were absent during that period. So one hopes that going forward they are going to be more careful to protect these officers that are supposed to be protected. I think in my reading of the IBC, these changes that happened, and Eric will also tell us, there isn't that thing about cars being or vehicles being polling stations in some instances, but I want us to look at the elections amendment bill. I think that's where normally it would be. But I've not looked at it, so I don't want to comment to say that it is there or it's not there. But I saw that Kioni said it was somewhere there. But in the IBC, I've looked at the IBC. I've just, as we talked now, I have quickly looked at the IBC amendments, the IBC bill of 4th March 2024, unless at the end there were some changes introduced, which take into account stuff like that. But normally, those kinds of provisions should be in the election amendment bill. We talked about the conflict of interest, about the National Assembly saying, you know, this is not allowed and so on. The party, one of the problems with our political parties is they are not ideological. They are basically owned by people. They are mostly ethnic based. They're ethnic based, and therefore most of them don't have long staying power. They are electoral units, and then after elections, that's it. Very few survive any election, and therefore, unless, for example, the Gen Z comes up with a manifesto, unless, for example, they think about whether they want to have a
Guys, looks like we lost the speaker. Is Professor still on the mic?
Raymond, I can't
Hello?
hear Professor.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, Prof, you're back.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear Prof. Bwana.
Okay.
Proceed.
Yeah. So going forward, I think, but maybe that's something that the movement will think about. But the route of independent candidates, it's an interesting route, but they may think about, you know, either adopting a party, having a party, or adopting several parties which are sympathetic to what the Gen Z likes. The civic education is very critical, and that's why through these spaces and, you know, every other way, one has to reach as many people so that they're at the same level with you guys. the IBC, I talked about how, given where we are in terms of this law that has been ascended to, and given that the panel they will use competitive methods to the panel, for people to come into the panel, a competitive method is used. So it is up to Gen Z, this movement, to look at the people who come to the panel and later the people who apply to become commissioners, so that it's really people of significant integrity, and to be very, very clear that those are the people who are going to give us a commission that can be in charge of truly free, fair, transparent elections, as the Constitution says we should have. Of course, we'll remember that in 2022, when after there was the mandamano because of the question of the elections, the people who died were not. That issue was forgotten because I think ODM did go to court. They said that they will be compensated and so on, and they were forgotten. And I was saying this because we saw during this time the Gen Z movement itself trying to assist the families and those who are in hospitals and so on. So that's also something else to keep on reminding, that even when people get hurt and all that and die and so on, when you don't follow up, then people have a bad taste in the mouth. They are saying that it's like we are being used. And when we get, the political class goes and talks and forgets us. So this was extremely commendable. What Anifa and Mwangi and Hussein and all of you, what you did in terms of also crowd funding, and you have been crowd sourcing your ideas, and that has assisted a lot. Therefore, the last question, I think you cannot trust anybody, and that was said emphatically, that you cannot trust anybody to get into leadership, meaning that the Gen Zs are once beaten, twice shy. They really don't want to hear names being floated and all that kind of stuff. But I want to say, even if you don't trust the older people, you must trust yourselves. If I can remember historically, Muammar Gaddafi became Libya's leader at 27. Thomas Sankara led Burkina Faso at 34. There was the president of Madagascar, Andri, who was actually a former event organizer, and he initially became president of the Transitional Authority of Madagascar at 35. Martin Luther King, who led America's civil rights movement, did so at 26, started doing so at 26. Sebastian Kurz, who became Chancellor of Austria, did so at age 31. Sanna Marin became Finland's prime minister at 34. Jacinda Kate Laurel became New Zealand's prime minister at 37. And she had been elected as a member of parliament at 28. So these examples confirm that it is a myth that young people cannot occupy the highest offices of the country. So it is up to you to prepare yourselves in all ways. And no, it's a long struggle, but we need to have a country that is a human rights centered state, and the constitution is implemented to the full. The economy is democratized, and young people, have a major role in their country, and that's my prayer. Thank you.
May I please ask for clarity through the host? Please.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll ask after you.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Please proceed.
Okay. I think probably Eric is able to answer to this or respond to this. According to the election laws, which I think we discussed um, when Okia Omtata was here, Senator Okia Omtata was here, he said that because me hearing that we have to wait another 90 days for the IEBC to settle, to get reconstituted, to get this done, that done, he raised something that we thought on the panel, we thought the people that had attended that meeting that maybe could be the easiest way for us. Can't the presiding and the returning officers at the county level, can't they call for elections? That's one thing I would like clarified. And then the other thing about trust, Professor Kibuda, we do not trust the political elite. That's what we are trying to put forward. We do not trust the political elite. And amongst us, amongst the Gen Zs, the millennials, we do have leaders. We do have courage. We just need to find our structure. We just need to find our way up there. So I will yield with, with that. Thank you.
Okay, I
Uh,
also need a certain clarification here, kindly. Maybe Eric or Kivuda can answer me. I was suggesting if we can have a transitional council that can work parallel to this government. And since of course saizi kila mtu ni we don't trust this government at all these airlines. So can we have a transitional council that itakuwa that will be that will have maybe people activists there, we'll have maybe the people from the civil society and also Gen Z. Manake, we are the founders of this revolution.
okay, one more question from my end. Now that we know that Ruto has violated the constitution so many times, can we indict him, or do we need again another referendum to come up with laws? Because it seems right now that he can suspend the constitution anytime he wants and do whatever he wants. Is he above the law at this moment in time? Can we indict him, or does he have to be impeached before we can do that? Thanks.
We have any other person who has a question, or we can break and bring more people here. And before that, I can see Dr. Ezekiel Mutua in the house, the MCK CEO. Doctor, welcome on this panel. And if you wish to actually participate and give us your views and advise us, the young people, you can always request for the microphone. Yeah. Otherwise, let's continue. To one.
Um, my host, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, so one message to Dr. Ezekiel Mutua now that I know you are here. I think you have the same message as Raila Odinga to have the dialogue with the president. We are not ready for that. He knows what we want, and he knows what to do. There is no ground for any conversation between us and the president. Thanks.
Okay, so Professor can take over. Professor Eric, the floor is yours.
Hello. Yes. I think I'll answer some, and then Eric can also bring his legal knowledge to bear. Yes, I remember, because I was also in that space with the Omtata. Omtata argued that returning officer, according to the minor KI case, returning officers, actually the results are from the polling station. And then in the constituency, the returning officer is able to take the results to the IBC at whatever center, and then IBC is able to announce them, and so he said that even without the commissioners, it is possible to do an election. But I think it's Articles 88, subsection 4 or so, which gives the role of the IBC, the commission itself, in terms of supervising, directing elections, referenda, and all that, registering people, doing all the works. It gives leadership to those. And because all those things have not been done to give way to an election now, because of the IBC has not been in place for a long time, one can have those bottlenecks. And the Secretariat alone will be hesitant to actually do those things, because even in terms of who appoints the presiding officers, the returning officers, it's not the Secretariat, it is the commission itself. So yes, I can see where the argument is coming from, because truly it is at the polling station where the result really comes from, and then the rest is like addition. But is that the role of the commissions? And therefore, can there be a commission without commissioners? Can the Secretariat alone be a commission? And of course, according to the law now, the new law, the entire commission announces the results. The entire commission, not just the chair. They must have concurrence. So I think that is an area for further discussion. And Eric can weigh onto that as well. Can there be a parallel transitional council? See, this movement, like how I said in Makwene, we had also a people's government, and it was able to, it could do anything, that the government did. It could bring all those ideas, because we thought this is an Article 1 county. So it depends on how the Gen Zs organize themselves, so that through these expresses, through whatever else they create, will be able to continue their advocacy and to continue what they want to do to achieve the result that they want to achieve. And of course, ultimately, whatever decisions are taken, it comes down to how are they enforced. Like now, even what has been considered, how is it enforced? So that there have to be those mechanisms of doing that kind of stuff. And also to protect oneself from being told, now you are doing treason. But of course, when citizens say that we have Article 1 power, and we can, when we delegate authority to you, if you do some of those things like we don't want, and we go to the Ministry of Health, and we go to wherever else we go, we withdraw, I think that is what is being contested, and that is something new on the African continent. The impeachment, our president is impeached through parliament, and parliament has the ways of what it must do and what numbers are required and all that kind of stuff. But of course, given the nature of our current parliament, it would not be easy to see how the parliament would be able to take on such a task, even when citizens require it, or when there is reason, especially in terms of how one implements or does not implement the constitution. But I think what you're doing in terms of creating more and more avenues for discussion, and also this thing I suggested about some relying on some technical people in every area that you want to raise a point, whether it is in agriculture, whether it is in law, whether it is whatever, just sourcing information, including even from the diaspora. I think those are important things. And of course, to know that when one wants to change their country fundamentally, it is done. It's a long job. It's a long haul. It is not something to think that you'll do it tomorrow. It takes, particularly when you want to change the institutions, the culture, the policies, the laws, the all works. And that is why, to finalize, I've been very happy to see that the agencies themselves are focusing on even changing themselves in terms of the Kenya that they want. So that if it is, if you do wrong, they criticize you among them, each other. They are persistent. They go to these demonstrations. You don't see the looting by them. You don't see, when they say that people shouldn't be corrupt, you don't see them wanting to do that. There's empathy. They raise money for those who have fallen and those who are unwell. You see, you must, like Mahatma Gandhi said, create within yourselves the society that you want. And I think I can see that happening. And even when people go to those demonstrations, and sometimes it spills a little into during the night, people don't drink, and they don't, the boys don't abuse the girls, they protect them. And it's important for you to create even within yourselves the new society that you want all of us to have. Thank you very much.
Professor, before you go, one more question about the indictment I asked about the president. Can he be charged, or is he above the law?
According to the constitution, if you do anything against the constitution, you cannot be above the law. So it's a question of demonstrating what is it that the president or anybody else has done, which is, because like an impeachment is to get him out, but to get out a president whom, if you think that they have done wrong things, I would imagine, and Eric will also weigh on that. I would imagine that according to our constitution now, you cannot be against, above the law when the things that according to our integrity chapter of the constitution, if there are things that are against the constitution, you can only be protected, like if it's civil things or some criminal or something. When you're in office, you can be protected. But I think when if you fundamentally abuse the constitution, then I don't think there is being above the law.
Guys, I'm in a very noisy place, so at times I might not be able to speak, but I'd like to bring Eric on the space immediately after Professor Eric. Wherever you are ready, kindly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd actually logged in so that I can just follow the proceedings. And, Professor Kivutha Kibwana is a luminary in terms of leadership, in terms of his well-documented fight and support for constitutionalism in this country. And so I thought that this was a discussion that I wouldn't want to miss, and I logged in for that purpose. But of course, may just want to say one or two things in terms of some of the questions that have been posed. And I think we may want to begin with the last question that was posed to Professor Kibwana in terms of the immunity that the president enjoys while in office. I think this is one of the issues that the court did make a pronouncement on the BBI case, and several courts have made similar pronouncements. In terms of Article 143 of the Constitution, the president, for the time being, as is in office, enjoys protection, or rather has immunity from any criminal proceedings. And I think if there are any, then they have to await when he gets out of office. And again, he is protected in terms of civil proceedings for anything that he does in the exercise of his powers under the Constitution. And so it becomes extremely difficult to bring a successful case against an existing president for any of the transgressions, be they criminal or civil, while he sits in office. And this also has to be taken into context with jurisprudence that is coming from other countries. Or you may not know that the Supreme Court also, the Supreme Court of the United States did make certain pronouncements with regards to presidential immunity on certain issues touching on their president, or rather their former president, Donald Trump. And so there are all those considerations that have to be taken when anyone wants to institute a certain action. But then again, I think that we should not always be restricted to our local fora. There are other fora in which certain challenges may be made, depending on the nature of claim that one would want to institute, against a sitting president. But that said and done, whichever avenue one seek, because of the nature and profile and stature of the office of the presidency, definitely there will be several legal hurdles that someone has to overcome before they are able to successfully bring such an action. Let me just also say something with regards to the question that is oft posed in terms of the IBC and whether elections can actually be conducted by the returning officers. And I think that the understanding that I have of the Maina Kiai case is that the result is actually at the polling station. And the issue about that is to protect the sanctity of the result and to cure the misadventure that has existed prior, that was highlighted in the Kriegler report, about results changing as they transit from one polling station and go to Nairobi, where ideally was the commission would be best to give the final result, so that it should be final at the polling station, but the finality is with regards to us to cure the aspect of election result manipulation. But if you, so you can, it would be a bit difficult and tenuous also to draw a corollary, in the sense that if the result is at the polling station and that the polling station is under the exclusive control and jurisdiction of the returning officer at that particular level, and for the Senate, the returning officer at the county level, and that therefore, by extension, it would mean that they can then conduct elections. That in itself, I think, is an argument that may not be able to stand in consideration of when you are interpreting certain provisions of the law. You look at the mischief behind the law, so that it is not a more of a lateral interpretation, that if the results is final and is declared by the returning officer, then this returning officer can actually conduct the election. The election, as the courts have often held, is a process, and so there's a long process in terms of voter registration, verification of the voter register, and printing of the ballot papers, clearing of the candidates, and all those processes cannot be undertaken in the absence of the commissioners, because you have to look at it in the sense of the totality. There has to be a vacancy declared. That vacancy, if we are conducting by election, then the vacancy has to be declared, has to be gazetted, and those are things that have to be done by the commission. And so I think that it's an interesting legal argument, but one that may eventually not stand, in view of the fact that there are other processes that are concerned in an election, other than just the actual act of casting a ballot and counting it and declaring it, that cannot be conducted by the returning officers, and has to be, at a collective, be handled by the commissioners, of course, given technical and administrative support by the secretariat. So again, quite a number of cases have dealt with those issues. The Supreme Court, in its latter decision, the one that cleared Ruto in 2022, also looked at that issue and made certain declarations about the commission acting with all the commissioners present. And so those are, again, issues that would, again, create problems for us. When we come to the recall clause that is in the Constitution, in terms of Article 104 of the Constitution, again, we find ourselves in a similar situation where we have the Constitution giving us that right, but we get to that point when you come to sub-Article 2, which says that Parliament needs to enact the legislation that would give the grounds. And then Parliament did so, but sort of, in a way, expanded those grounds in a manner that then defeated the provision that was in the Constitution, and of course that was challenged in court, and the court actually did agree that that section is unconstitutional. So we are left at that place where perhaps we may need again to innovate and to try and see how we deal with that. Ultimately, we now come back to Article 1, which all of us are talking about and agitating, and then there is no doubt, absolutely no doubt whatsoever, that power belongs to the people, because that is what Article 1 says. And there's good reason why that is Article 1 of the Constitution. It reaffirms the authority of the Kenyan people, and it goes in line with the constitutional doctrine that all of us have power to govern ourselves. but we donate that power to other entities that we create so that they can exercise it in trust and ensure that all of us are able to get to Canaan. And I remember, the words of Martin Luther King when he was talking about this, and he was basically saying that it's like we have put our money into a bank, and the power that the Constitution then is like a guarantee that every time we ask for our money from the bank, it will never come back unpaid. And so I think that what is happening right now is, I've had quite a number of people talk about the question of trust. I think right now we are saying that basically there appears to be an element of deficiency of trust, and so therefore perhaps a situation has arisen for the people to then exercise their power directly. Again, from a very legal standpoint, that creates a little bit of a challenge, because when you read Article 1, it basically says that although the power belongs to the people, it has to also be exercised in accordance with the Constitution. And then, but there is the aspect of directly, and other people would argue that the aspect of direct exercise of power is at the ballot, and then indirectly through the elected officials and other institutions that are set up within the Constitution for that purpose. And then again, we will look at Article 2 of the Constitution in terms of its supremacy, and the argument that may come in that any other action that then appears to be outside the Constitution, or one that usurps the constitutional authority of certain offices, may again be unconstitutional. And of course, for the lawyers, and Kivuta Kibona might be, of course, is probably much more aware of this. There's those discussions about, unconstitutional constitutional change of the Constitution, so that again, we get into an area of diverse legal arguments in terms of how can we be able to do this and do that. But the one thing that I want to say is that I don't think all is lost, because for the first time, I think we have gotten to a point where everyone in this country, and I'm not just talking about the Gen Zs, but everyone in this country has come to actually appreciate that people actually matter, that the views of the people actually matter, that people can actually come together and they can agitate for what is right, and that those who, for political expediency, think that certain things cannot happen. We have really turned a moment in this country where we are almost certain that this is a new era in terms of accountability. And I would want to see this agitation and see whether this agitation can be structured in a way that will then be seeking for greater accountability in terms of how our resources are utilized. If you look at, for example, the reports that have come from the Auditor General, some of the reports that have come from the Controller of Budget, years and years go by, all of them have been highlighting several cases of misuse of resources, but they have never been highlighted as it has been highlighted in this space. And I think that if we can be able to look at it and try and say that, yes, we are where we are in terms of our leadership and in terms of the crisis that we are in, if we can find a mechanisms to sustain this so that there is greater scrutiny and accountability in terms of all the challenges that we are facing. And I say this because, for example, there are people, and I think it's Okio Mtata, who went to court and sought to, to ask the court as a way of us, as a person exercising his sovereign power, to be able to access the SGR contracts and the financing agreements that have been made around the SGR. And eventually, it became a little bit problematic to be able to access that. Now, if you look at that and you look at the reports that have come from the, the Auditor General in terms of the audit of the public debt, you I think that a higher level of scrutiny, and people have always said that the price of democracy is, and I paraphrase it, is eternal vigilance. Who really seeks to do well, but he finds that he has impediments. And you remember, and Professor Kibwana would probably say this, there was a time he had to propose for his county to be dissolved because he couldn't get his way around with his members of the county assembly in terms of the demands that they had on the equitable share that had come in and how much they wanted for the county assembly. And it led to a stalemate, and he took the bold and courageous move of saying, let us dissolve the county assembly so that we solve all this so that we can be able to get this done. Of course, eventually things were resolved. And I think that perhaps those are mechanisms as even as we're trying to find, and I want to confess at this time that I have no ready solution or in terms of what we can do. Or what the Gen Zs and what everyone, because this is not just a Gen Z issue, it is an issue that touches on all of us, and because we care deeply for this country and we would want to realize the promise that the country has, and we would want to realize that the promise that is in the Constitution for all of us, we probably need to start thinking around those areas and try and ask ourselves, how can we be able to maintain a culture of eternal vigilance, of asking questions, of probing, of demanding accountability, not just within the national government, but also at the county level, so that then we can allow the few that want to do good to actually come out and do good. And I say this because and then this is in conclusion, because there was a comment that was made about the judiciary. And yes, I have worked with the judiciary, and I know that there are some judicial officers that, are really not up to scratch, either in terms of incompetence or because they can easily be accessed and that can make decisions on the basis of other persuasions other than the merit of the case. But they're actually also extremely good judicial officers who have courage and who deliver cases on the basis of the merits of that case, notwithstanding any pressure or intimidation. And I think that we need to get to that point where we can allow those that actually, and their majority, there are so many in so many places in government that actually care about this country, that actually want to do things right, that actually want to exercise their functions with integrity, but the system is so anti-merit. I mean, we are all seeing this instance of this guard who was working at, and this is an apt illustration at Java, and who would restrain the police from coming in and getting people, and would open for those, protesters who clearly needed a safe haven, and he was sacked for doing the right thing. And I think that is the service, and perhaps and maybe those are now some of the things that we need to look at ourselves and say, perhaps if we maintain this culture of vigilance, then we can allow those that actually want to do the right thing to thrive, and perhaps that then may bring about the change that we actually want to see in the management of our public offices. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. We really appreciate for your time being here. And of course, I have a lot of speakers here. So, my speakers, I'll give this opportunity to my co-host to enable me moderate. Whoever has a question to Eric, you can pose the question. My co-host, kindly proceed.
Alafu
Lady, are you
guys,
there?
before we proceed
Oh,
with the questions, yeah.
sorry. I think
So
I think I
guys,
was muted.
yes, guys, before we proceed with the issue to do with the questions, I'll also kindly remind you guys on the issue to do with the data support. Kuna hiyo namba yenye iko pinned hapo, so guys kindly kidogo tu 2050 ndio tuweze kusupport Marvin akiendelea kutuhost hapo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think actually you are the one who was causing the the echo. So those of us that are on the panel, if you have not raised your questions, kindly raise your hand, and then we can direct our questions so that we'll be able to leave the panel and allow others to speak. If you could go ahead and ask your questions. Chege, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Kenya Lady. Eric, a pleasure to have you here. You've analyzed the issue of the Constitution quite well. I'm thinking about the trust deficit that is clearly there. And if I can be brutally honest, the leaderless movement is partly inspired by this trust deficit, but also on the knowledge that in the past, leaders are identified to be corrupted, to be abducted, to be killed, to disappear, so that you can scatter the movement. And I think of someone like Okia Umtata and his struggles for democracy and him exercising his constitutional duty as the sovereign to take cases to court and to put parliament to task, or rather the judiciary to task over things that parliament maybe has passed. And it begs the question why the Law Society of Kenya, for example, is not that champion for Kenya. We've had occasions in the past where people like Bishop Ndingi Mwananzeki, Reverend Njoya were champions of law and order and constitutionalism. And now, if you put all that in perspective and look at the Cherera 4 and Chebukati, and now this bomber discussions that have led to what we saw today, that Raila is now together with his brigade standing next to Ruto, and they are making the announcement, and we have now 5 commissioners who are going to be elected by the political class. And all this, we know very well, is an attempt to make sure that the announcement of who is going to be president will be somehow controlled by the political class. And then if we take a look at, for example, the US, there is no commissioner, there is no chairman who announces. If it is an arithmetic thing, why not take it completely away from the commissioners? And we say, since the minor Kiai decision was made, what is done at the polling station and by the is the presiding officer, I think, is at the polling station, and then the returning officer who is at the constituency, whatever he announces, we have media stations in each and every of those stations, and let the media call, just like the Americans call it. And if there is an issue, go to court. For me, this necessity, I agree with you that elections are a process. And therefore, the commissioners are important for the process, to supervise the process, to appoint returning officers. We saw in Embakasi a returning officer being shot. So yes, for that purpose they are required. But for this importance that is put on the chairman of the commission, surely with everything that we have seen, with what we are going through right now, whereby things are being held on spaces, why are we going around in circles as if we do not understand what is going on? Gen Zs might be naive to some of these things. They are not. I don't think they are, because they're asking fantastic questions. But surely, you being a former chairman of the LSK and other chairman emeritus and attorney generals emeritus and all these lawyers that we have, justices emeritus, surely you guys are failing the country by not speaking out, by not being the champions of this kind of thing. And so, for me, I really would love to hear a more powerful, a more stronger opinion from your side and advice, so that you can help us, navigate through that. Number two would be this issue of the conflict of interest laws. I really hope you guys are taking time. Professor has advised us that we should be having breakout rooms where we discuss some of these things. Prof, I was thinking as you were speaking that we have institutions in this country whose job it is to make sure that there is Hansards and things are captured in a way that is going to be made into laws. These discussions for me are very vibrant. They are very useful. Surely, Law Society of Kenya, Parliamentary Service Commission, wasikae hapo wakifikiria kazi yao ni kuongezea wabunge pesa. All these things need to be, we need to find a way of bringing them here. They are paid salaries to do this. The sovereign is calling you. By the way, we are the employer. The sovereign is calling you to come and take those Hansards and take those clerk of the National Assembly. They are inserting people here to investigate us and to block our systems. Can they be useful at least to these conversations and to be listening to the Gen Zs and to make sure that the things are captured in a way that makes sense and in a way that it comes through in society? Kenyan lady, I've seen Justice here. I think we need voices of the ladies as well. There is other people who haven't spoken. Kings Karibu, I'd seen your comment earlier. I was trying to communicate with KOT so that you can come on. Please, guys, put your hands up. Guys who are listeners, please come up. Dr. Ezekiel, come up. We want to hear from you people who at least we trust and we respect.
Justice Makonyango, are you able to speak to us?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I just wanted to ask anybody who's currently at the parliament today if they can share with us the details of the NADCO reports, because I'm trying to find it online. I can't find it, but it seems to be a very important document as far as youth and development in Kenya is concerned. Dr. Kivutha Kibwana, do you have an idea?
Let's kindly, sorry, let's go to Professor so that you can answer all the questions. Professor's hand is up.
No, I think the NADCO report, one can just access it by Google. It has been there for a long time.
Professor Professor 001, and then it's going to be Jamal next, and then Kings, in that order.
Let me, I was drafting something. Let me finish drafting it, then I will get back to you guys, kindly.
All right. All right. Jamal, could you kindly go ahead?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Also, thank you
By the
to
way, Kagamidi, as Jamal goes, sorry, Jamal, can you just check if Eric Theory is still there? I think he's dropped from the speaker panel.
and thank you to the professor Kivuta Kibwana for his rich input, and Eric, former LSK president. Recently, when the deputy president gave a press conference in Mombasa, there is one question that he posed. He posed the question, where did the rain start beating us, or something along that line? And unfortunately, he had narrowed it down to the current government that he is serving in. So he thought that by the time they were coming in after the elections, they were the darling of the country, and 2 years later, they lost the political goodwill from the masses. But I wish he had given us. And let me now put in my thoughts on what I think is the answer to that question. And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is and immediately after. Because what happened is we agitated at that time against an occupation, against imperial colonial power from Great Britain, who came and occupied and looted and taken everything, killed, did everything that our current government is doing to us. But then you will realize the process out of that situation, while there were people who went to the forest to fight because they knew you cannot negotiate with the enemy, because the enemy does not understand the language of win-win. The enemy is there to take it all. And in the words of Malcolm X one time said, how it is not possible to sit down with the then white people, because the white people were more or less colonizing the blacks in the Americas. And he said there is nothing to talk about because these people cannot give up what they have. It is the system that gives them all that they have. Then how is it they will just give it up? It's impossible. So what we did is then during the colonial period, we went to Lancaster, we gave a few names here and there whom they had a hand in. At Lancaster, they negotiated. But what they ended up negotiating, the colonial power, is so one by one you go through, they say, no, this one you can't have. If you insist on this, then there is no independence. And we know the outcome of that. The outcome of that then was that the whites were changed with blacks who were occupiers because the system went on. The new black leadership went on with the looting. Now they were in competition with the white man to get, if it is land, if it is wealth, they grab it here. By the time the Mau Mau came back, hoping to find the land that was taken away from them, there was nothing because it is the chief and the new guys in town who took it all. I have friends here in Kiambu who tell me that they know the time when their grandfathers were alive. They say, that place was my grandfather's farm and his household. But we can't access it because now the new guys took it over. Of course, it is a father generation who are currently occupying. So bring it forward to during Moi, during Kibaki, Uhuru, and of course the current president. So the thing is, we cannot isolate or be selective. We have to approach this because this is an opportunity in this country that has never presented itself. I think the closest we came to this was during the agitation by back in the day of Professor Kivuza Kibwana and other activists,
Now,
Orengo and
we
the like.
must
Then,
not forget dementia.
but we only came close to it. We
Okay,
never
some of
achieved
you
it.
understood what I was talking about. We must not forget
For us to achieve
dementia.
this,
Okay, I
then
can
it
hear one
means
person,
we
they've
must
understood.
change our mindset.
Right, dementia,
Because
for
the major
me,
issue that we
is
have
now
with,
one of the
in our
most
country and within
feared
ourselves
diseases
is our
around.
mindsets.
When I was
We have
younger,
all believed
a
that
younger
the
doctor,
solution
it
is
used to
not
be
with us.
cancer.
The
But now
solution has
dementia,
to be
losing your
copied
memory, losing your
from somewhere else.
personality, nobody wants that.
That is
It's a
why you
fearful
see
thing.
everyone speaking will
The
always
good
give you the
news is,
example
and there is
in the
good news
US,
about
in
dementia,
the UK,
it
in the
is
where,
a
in the here,
lifestyle disease.
because we
It
believe
is
the
not
white man has the
random.
solution.
Now,
Then why
you
did
may have
we
seen
need
studies to say, well, there's a
to
genetic
approve the
makeup.
white
There
man
is.
from here if we
There are
don't have the
genes for
solution?
dementia. But there are people
It's a
who
mindset
have the
problem.
gene for dementia
If you
who
look
don't
at
get dementia. There are
the
people
younger
who
generation
don't have the
currently
gene for
agitating
dementia
and doing
who
this, and
get dementia.
we
The
all
biggest factors are
generally,
lifestyle
before I say that,
factors.
generally
So,
in
for
this country
example, you will
also,
know
the
that if you have
people who
high blood
agitate
pressure, that's a
are the
risk for
ones
dementia.
who do not
If
have
you're
an
obese,
opportunity
if
at
you're
the table.
diabetic,
Over the
and the
years, it has been
biggest
like that.
risk
All
is
elections,
long periods of
whether
stress
someone
in
won
your
by
adult
merit
life.
or they rigged themselves in, the other side will always agitate because they are not at the table. The minute an opportunity or a window is offered for them to sit at the table, then it's all okay. We have seen, sorry to say, Baba, for example, Ruto, who was, of course, part of the previous regime, only that he was pushed aside for the last term under any real change. It can only bring out eloquent speakers who will promise heaven, deliver nothing. In 5 years' time, they'll find another narrative that will it is a system that is older than most of us, 400, 500, 600 years. The British is many, maybe 1,000 years. So then, what is the way forward? That is the question we need to ask ourselves. Is the way forward? Uh, do we then pressure the government in terms of we have outcomes that we must get in the short term, then we enumerate them, then we say we are pushing this agenda as a country, then we put a bit of pressure, and hopefully, like this current guy has done, at least he's able to listen here and there, and he's really conceding ground, then do we go on like that, or do we bring it down altogether? And this is dangerous because we must also look at countries around us who brought down regimes because they felt they're bad. 40 years later, they're in the wilderness, and I'm sure the wilderness is far much worse than the current form. So then, I think, in my opinion, what we need to do is we need to organize properly. We need to allow professionals to guide this, and we need people to, if given opportunity to guide this, push or pressure on government, they make a public commitment that they will not benefit out of this at personal level. That commitment is made. They will. The commitment can go in as far as even saying they will also not, because they'll become popular in this country, they will not even contest for positions in the next election. Because in this country, again, it is very easy to win elections by just pushing a narrative, and you trend here and there. The rest is now you pay influencers. All of a sudden, you are this angel. Then you lose your mind. But if you know from the beginning, you will not benefit out of this. You are doing it for the country. You are doing it for the next generation, and you will do your bit, and you step back. I think such kind of a leadership can take us to some extent forward. They can guide, and then we can do piecemeal reforms here and there, here and there, here and there, until we arrive in Canada. Because I don't think also it is easy to fix really this country in one instant. It is not, because the whole country is part of the problem, and we cannot get rid of all of us. So it means then we first have to accept, like they say, when you go to a psychiatrist, the first step is for you to accept that there is a problem. If you're an alcoholic, then step by step you take it forward like that. In so many words, what I'm trying to say is, number one, let us look inward for solutions, the right solutions, without copying anyone. Pragmatic solutions, adaptive solutions that will cure specific issues in society. Conflict of interest is one. People, putting their children in positions of power, and this is not a kingdom. Uh, People who have very dirty background have an opportunity today to tell us, simply because they are not at the table, uh, that this should have been the right thing to do. They can't be part of that solution. So if someone has a shoddy background, we just shun them. We ask fresh guys, professionals, young ones, 35, 30, 29, or even a 20-year-old can still think, of course, with guidance from older people within the group. Then step by step like that, I think if we are honest with ourselves, then we can fix the country. And the fix has to be slow and has to be painful. We must